My name is Sable Kincaid. I'm 42 years old, but I've lived enough life to feel twice that age. Chicago's suburbs are the kind of place where lawns are measured in inches, and gossip spreads faster than wildfire. It's quiet, safe, predictable. At least that's what I thought. Until my brother ripped the rug out from under me. The house I grew up in, the house my parents left in my care, wasn't just four walls and a roof. It was memory. My father's pipe smoke still clung to the den walls. My mother's perfume, a faint whisper of lavender, lingered in the upstairs hallway. Every creak of the staircase was a sound I'd known since childhood. It was home. I thought it was safe with me. 2 weeks ago, I came home from work, still in my navy blue blazer, coffee stains on the sleeve, when I noticed something taped to the front door, a folded letter, not handwritten, printed, cold. Notice of sale, effective immediately. The property located at 127 Ashbrook Lane has been transferred. I remember reading those words over and over, my vision blurring. My breath turned shallow. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the paper. No one told me, no one asked me. And then, at the bottom of the notice, I saw his name. Caleb Kincaid, my little brother. Caleb, who I'd defended from bullies in middle school. Caleb, who crashed Dad's car when he was 17 and begged me not to tell. Caleb, who promised after the funeral that we'd keep the house in the family. He sold it behind my back. That night, I drove to his place, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. His apartment smelled like takeout and stale beer. He opened the door, fake grin plastered on his face. "Sable, you got my text?" he asked. "What text?" I held up the letter like a weapon. "You sold the house?" He shrugged, leaning against the doorframe like this was nothing. "Look, I needed the money. It's just a house. You've got your law job. I figured you'd understand." "Understand?" My voice cracked. "That was our home, Mom and Dad's home. You had no right." He laughed, actually laughed. "You're too sentimental. It's just property, Sable. Don't make it bigger than it is." Something in me broke. My chest tightened like I was drowning. I could barely hear him over the roaring in my ears. Inside, I screamed, "How could you? How could my own brother betray me like this?" I didn't yell. I didn't cry. Not in front of him. I just stood there, staring at this man I no longer recognized, until my silence became louder than his excuses. He slammed the door, conversation over. That night, I sat in the kitchen of the house, my house, though apparently not anymore. Surrounded by shadows, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My mind replayed everything. The way he shrugged. The way he called it just a house. The way our parents' voices felt silenced in a single transaction. I pressed my palms against the cold countertop, whispering to myself, "No, not like this." He doesn't get to take everything and walk away. The betrayal gutted me, yes, but it also lit something else inside me, something cold, something sharp. I have a law degree. I know how contracts work. I know how fraud smells. And what Caleb did? It reeked. That's when the seed of revenge took root. I picked up the phone, called a contact at the county office, and asked for every file on the sale. Every signature, every date, every loophole. My brother thought he could sell our family legacy without consequence. He thought wrong. Because I was going to use the law, the very system he underestimated, to tear his world apart. And as I flipped through the first stack of documents, I froze. There it was, clear as day. A signature that didn't match. Forgery. My pulse quickened. My vision tunneled. If this was true, Caleb hadn't just betrayed me. He had committed a crime. I whispered into the empty kitchen, my voice shaking but steady with fury. "This isn't over, Caleb. Not by a long shot. When I went to law school, they taught us to read between the lines. Contracts are like people. What they say is one thing. What they hide is another." That lesson felt academic until the night I found the forged signature. After the first rush of disbelief, I leaned into what I knew. I set up a small war room in my apartment. A lamp, a legal pad, 3 folders labeled purchase, signatures, chain of title. I brewed coffee that burned my tongue and dove in. My first move was procedural, dull to anyone who hadn't lived inside a courtroom. I filed a Freedom of Information request for the county's transfer file and requested certified copies of every document in the chain. I called an old professor, Marion Hargrove, who still adored the smell of a well-argued case and owed me a favor from when I tutored her son. She warned me quietly on the phone, Be careful, Sable. You're peering into people's livelihoods now. I told her I'd be careful. I lied. The certified packet came in the mail 3 days later. It was heavier than the flimsy printout taped to my door. The notary stamps were crisp. The buyer's corporate name was listed, Ashbrook Development, LLC, and the buyer's representative, a man named Evan Cross, had signed on the closing date. My eyes traced the chain like a bloodhound. Every document led to another folder, another P.O. box, another shell company. The deeper I went, the less real the transaction became. Then I found the appraisal. Everything changed when I read the appraisal. Someone had valued our modest brick house at an amount far lower than its fair market value, cheap enough to make the buyer's cut look reasonable, and suspicious enough that a forensic accountant would blink. I made a call to a former colleague, Priya, who now did due diligence for a boutique accounting firm. She picked up on the second ring. "It smells like a wash sale," she said after I read the appraisal to her. Inflated buyer, underpaid seller, money routed through benign-looking accounts. If they used forged signatures to speed it, they could be laundering the difference. My pulse stuttered. This was bigger than a bratty brother. This was organized. My throat tightened in a new way, like the air had been stolen with the knowledge that my family home was entangled in something that could be criminal, and I was standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. For a few days, I moved like a ghost. I watched Caleb from a distance. No dramatic confrontations, no messy crying on his stoop. He had started to dress different, polos that didn't belong to him, a watch that flashed too bright. He was meeting people in restaurants with tinted windows. He smiled in a way I couldn't read. Greed had sharpened him. I had to bait him without him knowing it. I started subtle, a text to Caleb, a casual tone. "Hey, saw an article about property scams. Crazy stuff. Call me when you get a minute." He called. He sounded nervous, like a man who'd just lit a match in a dry forest. "Why are you poking around?" he asked. "Curiosity," I answered. "You know me, I can't help it." He laughed briefly, then said, "Listen, I did what I had to do. I didn't forge anything. The buyer just wanted to close fast. I handled the paperwork. Sorry it wasn't what you wanted." His words were butter over steel. I let the line buzz in my hand until he hung up. He'd said the magic word, buyer. That meant there was an outside party with deep pockets. That meant leverage. Next, I focused on Evan Cross. A quick search turned up a professional profile with a shiny LinkedIn page and a well-designed corporate site. But the address led to a mailbox in a business complex, and the phone number forwarded to a receptionist who knew nothing past Evan handles acquisitions. I started digging into property records and discovered a pattern. Ashbrook Development, LLC, had been linked to 3 other suspicious purchases in the county over the past year. The names changed, the notaries changed, but the money trail curved back to the same P.O. box. I realized I needed allies who could compel answers from people who didn't want to talk. I met with Priya and Marion in a cramped coffee shop. We made lists and talked about subpoenas, about a quiet civil suit that could force depositions, about using the buyer's own fiduciary responsibilities as a noose. But there was a problem I hadn't anticipated. The buyer, Evan, had hired a high-powered attorney 2 weeks before Caleb made the sale, a man named Patrick Armitage, who had a reputation for burying cases in paperwork and pushing settlements while smiling. If Armitage smelled blood, he'd circle the wagons. He was the kind of lawyer who could scare a county auditor into sleepwalking. That night, I sat in my car and watched the house from the sidewalk. The porch light cast long arms across the yard. Shadows pooled where my mother used to plant marigolds. I thought about justice and law, and how the two are not always aligned. The law is a tool. Justice is a choice. I had the tool. I needed to make the choice. Then I made one that felt dangerous and honest at the same time. I walked up the path and left a single envelope in the mailbox. Inside was a copy of the forged signature and a note with a single sentence. "If you want to keep your purchase quiet, start explaining who you are really buying from. No name, no return address." It was petty. It was theatrical. It was also the first real thing I'd done that was mine. 2 days later, my phone lit up with an unknown number. The voice on the line was low, controlled. "Ms. Kincaid, we've received your message. We're interested in discussing certain irregularities." Then a click. He didn't identify himself. He didn't have to. I knew the click belonged to a man used to getting answers without being seen. I had started a chain reaction, and for the first time since the notice on my door, I felt something that wasn't just anger. It was a precise, cold satisfaction, like a scalpel finally making a first incision. But as the adrenaline faded, a new fear crawled up my spine. Caleb was not the only one with secrets. And the deeper I cut, the more likely it was that someone would cut back. I looked up at the house, at the place where family photos once hung crooked on the walls, and whispered to the empty evening, "You wanted this, Sable. Don't waver now." The voice on the phone haunted me for days. Controlled, precise, and cloaked in power. Whoever that man was, he wasn't just some corporate errand boy. He was someone who lived in shadows, someone who handled problems without paperwork. That made me nervous, but it also made me smile. Because if they were rattled, it meant I'd hit a nerve. I had leverage now. I spent the next week preparing my first strike. At dawn, my desk was already buried in files. Copies of the forged signature, irregular appraisals, suspicious P.O. boxes. I circled, highlighted, annotated until my highlighter bled dry. Then I drafted a preliminary complaint. Kincaid vs. Ashbrook Development, LLC. I didn't file it, not yet. Filing would be the declaration of war. Instead, I mailed a courtesy copy straight to Patrick Armitage's office. No cover letter, just the complaint. A silent warning. 2 days later, my phone rang again. "Ms. Kincaid," a deep voice purred. "Armitage. I received your document. Surely you know baseless allegations can be considered defamation. I also know that forged signatures and fraudulent appraisals can be considered felonies," I said. My tone was calm, almost bored, though my heart was pounding. He chuckled softly. "You're playing a dangerous game. Do you really want your family name dragged into court?" "My family name was dragged through the mud the moment my brother sold our house to your ghost company," I snapped. A long pause. Then he said, low and deliberate, "We protect our own, Miss Kincaid. That's not a threat. It's a fact." And he hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. My apartment walls felt thinner, every shadow heavier. I triple-checked the locks, closed every curtain, and still, unease buzzed under my skin. I replayed his words, "We protect our own." Who exactly was we? The next morning, I decided to dig deeper. I arranged a quiet meeting with Priya at a downtown cafe. She slid a flash drive across the table. "I traced some payments linked to Ashbrook," she whispered. "You were right. It's not just shady, it's systemic. Shell companies, offshore accounts, and one name kept popping up. Crossfield Holdings." "Never heard of them," I said. "You wouldn't. They're buried under 5 layers of corporate veils. But guess who sits on their board?" She pulled out her phone, showing me a blurry photo. My stomach dropped. It was Caleb. I couldn't breathe. My baby brother, who once begged me to cover for him when he wrecked Dad's Buick, wasn't just a pawn. He was on the board of the very company pulling the strings. "Priya, are you sure?" My voice cracked. "Positive. He's not just cashing out. He's part of it." I gripped the table so hard my knuckles whitened. I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash the cup of coffee into the floor. But instead, I forced myself to whisper. "So he didn't betray me to save himself. He betrayed me to join them." Priya looked at me with pity, but also admiration. "What are you going to do?" I stared out the cafe window, watching the L trains rattle past. My reflection in the glass looked foreign, harder. "What I was always meant to do," I said. "Make him regret it." I spent the next several nights alone, outlining strategy. To take down Caleb and Ashbrook, I needed more than legal motions. I needed witnesses, proof, something undeniable. So I went back to the house. It was a Friday evening, the air heavy with the scent of cut grass. I parked down the street, hood pulled up, and waited until the lights inside flickered off. Then I slipped around the side, through the overgrown hedges, into the backyard where we once played kickball as kids. I tested the back door, unlocked, typical Caleb. He never cared for details. Inside, the house smelled wrong. No longer lavender and smoke. Now it smelled like fresh paint and cheap cologne. I walked through each room slowly, memories hitting me like bricks. The spot where Dad's recliner used to be. The hallway where Mom measured our heights in pencil marks. And then, in the study, I found it. A stack of folders carelessly left on the desk. Some were labeled Ashbrook, others Crossfield. My fingers trembled as I flipped through them, closing statements, wire transfers, even meeting notes. Caleb's signature was everywhere, bold and proud. But then, something else. A document titled Acquisition Schedule, Phase 2. And right there, in black and white, 5 more properties listed for takeover. All in the same neighborhood. All at suspiciously low valuations. They weren't just stealing my home. They were gutting the entire block. I stuffed as many files as I could into my bag, heart hammering. My footsteps echoed against the hardwood floors as I headed for the door. Then headlights swept across the window. A car pulled into the driveway. I froze, my bag of stolen documents heavy against my shoulder, my pulse thundering in my ears. The front door unlocked, and I heard Caleb's voice. The sound of the front door unlocking jolted me like a gunshot. I froze, clutching the stolen documents in my bag. My pulse roared in my ears as Caleb's voice carried into the hallway. Yeah, don't worry, I'll have the papers ready by Monday. Cross wants the next deal airtight. He wasn't alone. Footsteps followed him, 2 sets, heavy, deliberate, male voices, low. My stomach dropped. I ducked behind the study door, every nerve on fire. Caleb laughed at something one of the men said. It was an easy laugh, a confident laugh. So unlike the nervous kid I remembered. This was a different Caleb, a colder one. I peeked through the crack. He had bulked up, his hair slicked back. A new leather jacket. And he was carrying a briefcase. The other men were strangers. Suits, sharp jaws, eyes like knives. One carried a small silver case. My breath caught. This wasn't just business. This was something darker. They walked into the living room, still talking. I crept backward, inch by inch, praying the old floorboards wouldn't betray me. Crossfield wants those appraisals doctored again, one of the suits said. And the neighborhood committee? Caleb asked. We'll handle it. Money talks. I wanted to scream. My block, my neighbors, retirees, families, kids playing basketball in driveways. They were collateral damage. Caleb was selling out everyone, not just me. I shifted my weight, ready to slip toward the back door. And the study door creaked. I held my breath. Did you hear that? One of the suits asked. Caleb frowned, scanning the hallway. He moved closer, his hand brushing the doorknob. My mind raced. If he opened that door, I was finished. So I did the only thing I could think of. I pulled out my phone, opened the voice recorder, and whispered into it. Meeting notes. Caleb Kincaid discussing fraudulent appraisals, crossfield involvement, bribery of committee. Then I slid the phone under the desk, recording everything. The doorknob rattled. My heart almost exploded. Then Caleb's phone rang. He cursed and stepped back. Yeah? No, I'll send it tonight. The moment was gone. He turned and walked back into the living room. The suits followed. I exhaled so quietly I almost passed out. For the next 15 minutes, I crouched in the dark, every muscle screaming. Their voices floated in, numbers, names, deadlines. My recorder captured it all. Finally, the front door opened again. Footsteps left. Engines started. Silence. But Caleb stayed. I could hear him pacing, muttering to himself. His voice cracked with a sudden fury. She's going to ruin this. I know it. Sable never lets things go. Damn her. My chest tightened. He knew, maybe not about tonight, but he knew I was coming for him. That knowledge felt like both a warning and a challenge. I waited until the house finally went quiet, then slipped out the back door, clutching my bag. The night air hit me like ice, but I felt alive. I had proof now. Documents, recordings, a trail of voices tying Caleb to something much bigger. But with proof came danger. Because if Caleb suspected me, then Ashbrook and Crossfield would too. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, files spread out, my phone playing back Caleb's words. Each phrase was another nail in his coffin, but my victory felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. And then, around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with a new message. No name, no number, just one line. Stop digging or you'll be buried next. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling, and whispered to the empty room. You'll have to bury me deep because I'm not stopping. The anonymous message kept replaying in my head. Stop digging or you'll be buried next. I'd seen threats before, angry letters from losing clients, drunken voicemails from ex-husbands. But this was different. This was cold, professional, final. Still, I didn't back down. If anything, it made me hungrier. The next morning, I copied the recordings from my phone to 3 different flash drives. One went into my desk drawer, another into a safe deposit box, and the third I mailed to Marion, my old professor. If they wanted to bury me, fine, but they'd never bury the truth. By noon, I was sitting across from Marion in her cluttered office at the university. She flipped through the documents I'd smuggled out of Caleb's house, her brow furrowed. "This is enough to start a RICO case," she whispered, almost to herself. "Crossfield, Ashbrook, the forged signatures. This isn't just fraud, it's racketeering." My pulse quickened. "But will the authorities even touch it?" She hesitated. "If they do, they'll put your brother in the middle. Are you ready for that?" I stared at the floor, my throat tightened. Caleb wasn't just my enemy, he was my blood. Every memory of us as kids slammed into me, playing tag in the yard, fighting over the TV remote, holding hands at Mom's funeral. But then I pictured his smug grin in the living room, talking about bribing the neighborhood committee, and my hesitation hardened into steel. "Yes," I said, "I'm ready." Later that evening, I arranged to meet Priya again. We chose a dimly lit diner off the highway, neutral ground. She looked tired, her eyes darting around as though she expected someone to be listening. "You need to be careful," she said, stirring her coffee. "Crossfield doesn't just play with money. People disappear when they get too close." I leaned in. "Then let's make sure I'm not the one who disappears." She slid another folder across the table. "This is the link you need. Bank records tying Caleb directly to Crossfield payouts. If this leaks, he's finished." My hands trembled as I opened it, line after line of deposits, all routed to an account under Caleb's name. There it was, black and white betrayal. "Thank you, Priya," I whispered. "With this, they can't deny it." But Priya didn't smile. Her jaw was tight, her eyes wet. "Just promise me you'll survive this. Exposing them won't mean anything if you end up—" She cut herself off, shaking her head. That night, as I walked back to my car, I noticed something strange. My headlights were already on. I froze. I always turned them off. Always. Slowly, I circled the car, scanning the shadows. Nothing. No one. But my gut screamed danger. I slid into the driver's seat, heart hammering. The upholstery smelled faintly of smoke. I reached for the ignition, then stopped. A wire dangled beneath the steering column. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't just a threat anymore. Someone had tampered with my car. I got out fast, slammed the door, and called a tow truck. Standing there under the dim streetlight, the reality sank in. This wasn't a game of lawsuits and signatures anymore. This was survival. When the tow truck hauled my car away, I called Priya from a payphone. My voice shook as I told her what I'd found. She went silent. Then she whispered, "Sable, there's something I need to tell you. I wasn't going to say it, but you deserve to know." My chest tightened. "What?" "It's Caleb. He knows about me. He knows I've been helping you." The world tilted. "What do you mean he knows?" "He called me yesterday. Said if I didn't back off, he'd make sure I regret it. I think he's having me watched." I closed my eyes, rage mixing with terror. Caleb hadn't just sold out our parents' legacy. He was willing to destroy anyone who stood in his way, even me, even the people helping me. I gripped the receiver, whispering to the empty phone booth. "He doesn't realize it yet, but he just declared war." The morning after the car incident, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by files, sleepless and hollow-eyed. But fear had calcified into resolve. If they wanted me buried, I'd drag them into the light first. By 9 a.m., I was standing in the county courthouse, complaint in hand. The clerk stamped it, Kincaid vs. Ashbrook Development, LLC, Crossfield Holdings, and Caleb Kincaid. It was official now. War wasn't coming. It had begun. I thought filing would bring relief. Instead, it brought a storm. By noon, my inbox was flooded. Emails from Patrick Armitage's office, threatening letters dressed up in legal jargon, motions to dismiss before I'd even served them. They wanted to choke me with paper. But buried among the noise was one email that chilled me to my core. It wasn't from Armitage, it was from an anonymous account. The subject line, "Traitor in your camp." The body contained only a single sentence. "Not everyone who smiles at you is on your side." That night, I met with Priya again, this time at her apartment. The blinds were drawn, her voice hushed. "They've started digging into me," she said, shoving a folder toward me. Inside were screenshots of her work email hacked, her calls logged, her movements tracked. I clenched my jaw. "It's Caleb. He's pulling strings." She nodded, but then her eyes flicked away, nervous, guilty. "Priya," I said slowly, What aren't you telling me? She twisted her hands, then whispered, I didn't mean to. They cornered me, Sable, Armitage himself. He offered protection if I gave him updates on you. The room spun. You told them about me? My voice cracked. Tears welled in her eyes. Not everything, just small things, meeting times, where you were staying. I swear I was trying to keep you safe. My stomach dropped like I'd been shoved off a cliff. The anonymous email had been right. The betrayal wasn't just Caleb. It was seeping into my circle, poisoning even my allies. I stood, pacing the room, fury rising like a tide. Do you understand what you've done? They tried to blow up my car, Priya. And you handed them the map. She broke down, sobbing. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I wanted to scream, to slam the folder against the wall. Instead, I forced myself to breathe, to think. Anger wouldn't help me now. Strategy would. The next morning, I filed an emergency motion for protection with the court. Judges don't hand those out easily, but the forged documents and suspicious threats gave me leverage. If Armitage wanted to bury me, he'd have to do it under a microscope. But even as I pushed forward, paranoia stalked me. Every car that slowed on my street, every stranger lingering too long, it all looked like a threat. And Caleb? He wasn't hiding anymore. 2 nights later, he showed up at my apartment. He didn't knock, he pounded. When I opened the door, his face was twisted with anger I'd never seen before. Do you have any idea what you've done? He hissed. I held my ground. I filed the truth. His eyes narrowed. You think the truth matters? Crossfield owns the truth. They own the judges, the appraisers, the banks, and now they own you. Not yet, I shot back. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Siblings turned enemies. My blood, my betrayer. Then his voice dropped, quiet but lethal. Back out now, Sable, or I swear you won't live to see the verdict. He left before I could answer, the echo of his threat hanging in the hallway like smoke. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it, my chest heaving. This was no longer just about the house, or even about justice. This was survival. And if Caleb wanted war, he had it. Courtrooms are supposed to be safe, places where truth is weighed, where order triumphs over chaos. But the morning of the preliminary hearing, as I walked up the marble steps of the Cook County Courthouse, it didn't feel safe. It felt like walking into a trap. Inside, the air buzzed with tension. Reporters lingered in the hallway, whispering about the Kincaid siblings and their war over an inherited house. They didn't know half of it. If they did, they'd realize this wasn't just a family feud. It was organized crime hiding in plain sight. When the clerk called the case, I rose from the plaintiff's table, my palms damp. Across the aisle sat Patrick Armitage, smug in his tailored suit, and beside him, Caleb, my brother. His eyes were cold, unreadable. No trace of the boy I once protected. The judge entered, gravel-voiced and impatient. This is a motion hearing. Keep it brief. Armitage stood first. Your Honor, this case is a sham. A bitter sibling dispute dressed up as fraud. The plaintiff, Ms. Kincaid, offers conjecture and conspiracy theories. My clients, Ashbrook Development and Crossfield Holdings, are legitimate businesses. And as for Mr. Caleb Kincaid, he has every legal right to sell his interest in the property. I clenched my fists. Lies delivered like gospel. When it was my turn, I rose, forcing my voice steady. Your Honor, this isn't about bitterness. This is about forgery, fraudulent appraisals, bribery of neighborhood committees. I have documents, recordings, and witnesses ready to testify. The judge narrowed his eyes. You have evidence in hand? Yes, I said firmly. But as I opened my briefcase, my stomach dropped. The folder was empty. For a moment, the world tilted. My heart lurched. I'd packed those documents myself. Contracts, transfers, Caleb's signature trail. Now the folder was nothing but blank pages. Behind me, a reporter's camera clicked. Ms. Kincaid, the judge barked. I forced my hands not to shake. Your Honor, the evidence was tampered with. The originals were here this morning. Armitage smirked. Conjecture, as I said. The judge sighed heavily. I'll grant continuance, but Ms. Kincaid, this court requires proof, not stories. He banged the gavel. Hearing adjourned. I stood frozen, heat rushing to my face. Around me, the murmurs of the crowd felt like knives. Caleb leaned close as he passed me on the way out, his voice low enough only for me. You can't even hold on to your own files. How do you expect to win? His cologne hit me as sharply as his words. Outside, the reporters swarmed. Flashes popped. Questions fired. Is this just a family squabble? Are you inventing evidence? I pushed through them, my chest tight, rage boiling under my skin. By the time I reached the street, Priya was waiting in her car. You okay? She asked, pulling me inside. No, I said, my voice breaking. They stole my evidence, right out of my bag. Priya's eyes widened. Then someone close had access. Her words hit me like a hammer. The betrayal in my circle wasn't over. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts, my thoughts racing. Who else had touched those files? Who else knew where I stored them? Marion, Priya, the clerk at the copy shop, or someone I hadn't considered yet. I stared out the window as the courthouse loomed behind us, whispering to myself, they want me to give up. They want me broken, but I won't stop. Not now, not ever. But even as I spoke, a chill ran down my spine, because I realized something terrifying. If they could reach into my briefcase in broad daylight, inside a courthouse, then nowhere was safe. And the next move they made might not just be against my case. It might be against me. After the humiliation in court, I spent 2 nights staring at my ceiling, replaying every moment. The missing files, Armitage's smirk, Caleb's whisper. They thought they'd broken me, but the truth was still out there. And if the courtroom wasn't safe, I needed a battlefield they couldn't control. I started by rebuilding my case from scratch. Priya sat across from me at her kitchen table, eyes red from lack of sleep. We need a secure chain this time. Off-site servers, encrypted backups. If they hacked before, they'll try again. I nodded. Then let's make it impossible to erase. If I disappear tomorrow, the evidence drops everywhere. Press, regulators, online. Her lips tightened, but she agreed. We spent hours scanning documents, uploading recordings, creating redundant trails. Every beep of the scanner felt like defiance. Still, the betrayal gnawed at me. Who had pulled the files from my briefcase? Priya swore she hadn't. Marion promised she wouldn't. But someone had touched my circle. Late one night, I dug through surveillance footage from the courthouse security office. It took some convincing, but an old friend in the clerk's office slipped me a copy. I watched frame after frame until my eyes blurred. Then, there, a woman I didn't expect. Marion. She was on the tape, leaning near my briefcase in the waiting area, her hand slipping something inside her jacket. My chest tightened. The woman I trusted to help me fight, the mentor who'd once guided me through law school, was working against me. The next morning, I confronted her. She was in her office, papers stacked high, glasses perched on her nose. When I dropped the still frame from the video onto her desk, she went pale. Sable, it's not what you think, she said quickly. Then explain why my evidence disappeared the same day you touched my case file. Her shoulders slumped. For a long moment, silence pressed between us. Finally, she whispered. They came to me months ago. Crossfield. They knew I was advising you. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd ruin me. Disbarment, debt, worse. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did, I snapped. My voice shook, raw with betrayal. You didn't just hurt me, Marion. You helped them. Tears welled in her eyes, but I turned away. My trust was gone. That night, I told Priya. Her jaw tightened. If Marion's compromised, then she's dangerous. We cut her out. We move faster. I nodded, but the pain lingered. It felt like I was losing allies faster than I gained them. And yet, fate gave me something new. A week later, an unmarked envelope slid under my apartment door. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No note, no signature. Just a financial statement. And there it was, Caleb's name tied directly to a Crossfield offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Millions funneled through shell companies, signed off by him personally. I sat back in my chair, the paper trembling in my hands. This wasn't just greed anymore. This was corruption at a scale that could topple them all. Whoever sent me the document wanted me to know. Caleb wasn't just a pawn. He was a king. For the first time, I smiled, a sharp, dangerous smile. They thought betrayal would weaken me, but now I had proof. Enough to burn their empire down. And if Caleb thought blood ties would stop me, he was wrong. Because family may have started this war, but justice was going to finish it. I held the Cayman Islands statement in my hands until the paper felt damp with sweat. Caleb's name, his signature, millions funneled through Crossfield's shadow network. This was it, the smoking gun. I could take this to the press, to regulators, to the FBI. It was bigger than one family home now. It was corruption on a scale that demanded light. But light draws shadows, and shadows fight back. I spent the next 48 hours building a dead man's switch. Every document, every recording, every screenshot was uploaded to encrypted servers. If something happened to me, the files would automatically release to dozens of journalists and watchdog groups. I wrote the emails myself, each one timed like a clock. For the first time, I felt untouchable until the knock on my door. It was nearly midnight. The building was quiet, streetlights buzzing faintly outside. 3 sharp knocks. I froze. Through the peephole, I saw Caleb. Alone. I opened the door an inch, chain still on. His face was pale, lips tight. "Sable, we need to talk." I almost laughed. "Now you want to talk?" "Please," he said. For the first time, his voice cracked. "They know what you've got, Crossfield. They're coming for you. Tonight." Every instinct screamed trap. But his hands were shaking. His eyes darted down the hallway like a hunted animal. "They don't trust me anymore," he whispered. "They said I was sloppy, that I let you get too far. If I don't deliver you, they'll make me disappear too." I studied him, my jaw tight. "You sold me out once. Why should I believe you now?" "Because I'm still your brother," he hissed. "And because if you don't move in the next hour, you're dead." I slammed the door, locking it. My heart thundered. Maybe he was lying. Maybe it was a ploy to lure me out. But what if it wasn't? I paced the apartment, whispering to myself, "Stay or run, trust or fight." That's when the power went out. The apartment plunged into darkness. The hum of the refrigerator died. The streetlights outside blinked black. And in that silence, I heard footsteps on the fire escape. I grabbed the bag with my files, clutching it like a lifeline. My phone buzzed with a single notification. Dead man's switch armed. Good, if they wanted me, fine. But the moment they touched me, the world would know everything. Glass shattered in the kitchen. Someone was inside. My pulse pounded, every muscle tense. I edged toward the back door, but before I could reach it, a beam of light cut through the darkness. A man's voice, low and cold. "Miss Kincaid, you should have listened." The flashlight beam blinded me, slicing through the dark like a blade. "Step away from the bag," the man ordered. His voice was calm, almost casual, like he'd done this 100 times. I didn't move. My bag held everything, files, backups, the proof of Crossfield's rot. Losing it meant losing everything. "Now," he said more firmly. His silhouette filled the kitchen doorway. Then another voice. "Leave her alone." "Caleb?" He stepped out of the shadows, his own hands raised. The 2 men faced each other, the hired enforcer and my brother. The man sneered. "You had one job, Caleb. Deliver her." "I'm changing the deal," Caleb said. His voice was shaky, but it carried something new, defiance. My breath caught. For once, he wasn't just betraying me, he was betraying them. The enforcer laughed, low and cruel. "You think Crossfield lets people walk away?" Caleb's jaw clenched. "I think they underestimated us." Us. The word echoed in my head, foreign and dangerous. Before I could process it, the enforcer lunged. Caleb shoved me sideways. The flashlight skittered across the floor as we crashed into chaos. Shouts, fists, the sound of furniture splintering. I scrambled for the bag, clutching it as boots thundered behind me. Caleb wrestled with the man, grunting, until a sickening crack filled the air. The enforcer collapsed unconscious. Caleb stood over him, breathing hard, his face bruised and bloody. For a long moment, silence, just the 2 of us, the wreckage of my apartment around us. "You saved me," I whispered. "Don't read too much into it," Caleb muttered, wiping blood from his lip. I was next on their list anyway. His eyes met mine, haunted, broken. "Sable, I'm in too deep. Crossfield, they won't stop. Not until we're both gone." My grip tightened on the bag. "Then we don't stop either. We take them down." For the first time, he didn't argue. He just nodded. The next morning, we were gone before sunrise. I left the shattered apartment behind, taking only the bag and my phone. Priya met us at a safe house outside the city, her face pale when she saw Caleb. "He's with us now?" she asked warily. "For now," I said. Caleb slumped into a chair, exhausted. "If you want to destroy Crossfield, I'll help. But you need to know what you're up against." He looked me dead in the eye. "It's not just fraud or bribes. It's bigger, political, judges, banks, even cops. They're all on the payroll. You think you've seen their power. You've seen nothing." His words chilled me, but they also sharpened my resolve. Because if Crossfield's empire was that big, then tearing it down would matter more than ever. And as I stared at my brother, the man who had betrayed me, and now maybe, just maybe, was choosing to stand beside me, I realized something. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was war. And it had only just begun. The safe house smelled of dust and stale coffee. It wasn't much, but it was the only place left where I felt I could breathe. Priya sat hunched over her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. Caleb paced like a caged animal, every step heavy with guilt and rage. I watched him carefully, my brother, my betrayer, my reluctant ally. The silence between us was thick, broken only by the clatter of keys. Finally, I said it. I don't trust you. He froze, turning slowly. I don't blame you. We worked anyway, because survival left no choice. Priya tapped the screen. Crossfield's shell network runs through dozens of accounts. But these offshore statements tie Caleb directly. If we can connect the accounts to property acquisitions, it proves organized laundering. I leaned closer. And if we expose that, it's not just fraud, it's federal. Caleb muttered, almost to himself. You think the feds aren't on their payroll too? Priya shot him a glare. So what, we give up? He shook his head. No, I'm saying, if you want to hit them, you have to hit harder than the law. You have to hit where it hurts. I stared at him, uneasy. And where's that? Caleb met my eyes. Their money flow, shut down their accounts, even temporarily, and Crossfield collapses under its own weight. Priya frowned. That's not easy. We'd need insider access, codes, authorization keys. Caleb looked at me. I have them. I memorized some of the access when they brought me into meetings. They never thought I'd use it against them. I narrowed my eyes. And you're just handing that to us now. His shoulders slumped. I've lost enough, Sable. If you don't believe me, fine. But if we don't move soon, none of us will make it out. We made the plan that night. Priya would prepare the systems. Caleb would provide the access. I would time the release of evidence with the financial hit. 2 blows at once. But the closer we worked, the more the tension grew. Every time Caleb leaned too close, I remembered the letter on my door, the betrayal, the smirk in court. And yet, part of me saw the cracks in him, the shaking hands, the haunted eyes. He was drowning too. Could I forgive him enough to trust him? The next evening, I left the safe house for a brief walk, needing air. When I returned, the front door was ajar. My pulse spiked. I slipped inside, bag tight against my shoulder. The living room was dark, silent. Priya, I whispered. No answer. I crept down the hall, each step creaking. Then I saw it. Papers scattered across the floor. Priya's laptop overturned. Screen cracked. And on the wall, written in thick black marker, "Trust no one." I spun around, heart pounding, bag clutched like a shield. "Caleb," I shouted. From the kitchen he emerged, hands empty, face pale. "I heard them too late," he said hoarsely. 2 men, masks. They grabbed Priya. I tried. His voice broke. My chest collapsed. Priya was gone, taken. The message on the wall stared back at me, mocking. "Trust no one." For the first time, I didn't know if that meant Caleb, or if it meant me. The words on the wall burned into my eyes. Trust no one. The safe house that once felt secure was now poisoned. Priya, my ally, my lifeline, was gone. And Caleb stood in front of me, bruised and pale, claiming he'd tried to stop it. I wanted to believe him, but belief was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. "Where did they take her?" I demanded. He shook his head. "I don't know. They blindfolded her before they dragged her out, but I recognized one of their voices." "Who?" He hesitated, then said, "Evan Cross." The name slammed into me like ice water. The buyer on the contract, the ghost behind the curtain. "He doesn't get his hands dirty," Caleb muttered. "Not unless it's personal. If he was there, Priya's leverage. They'll use her to break you." I clutched my bag tighter. "Then we get her back before they do." Caleb's eyes searched mine. "You still don't trust me, do you?" "No," I said flatly. "But I don't need to trust you. I just need you to want Crossfield gone as much as I do." His jaw tightened. "I do." We spent the night tracing threads. Caleb sketched out Crossfield's network on the back of a diner napkin. Warehouses, shell offices, safe properties where meetings were held. One address circled back twice. An abandoned printing factory on the south side. "That's where they keep leverage," Caleb said grimly. "People, evidence, blackmail material. If Priya's alive, she's there." My stomach turned. The thought of Priya tied to a chair in a dark warehouse made bile rise in my throat. "We go tonight," I said. We drove in silence, the city blurring past. Rain streaked the windshield, each drop smearing neon into rivers of color. I glanced at Caleb gripping the wheel. His knuckles were white, his breathing shallow. Was it fear, guilt, or both? When we pulled up near the factory, the windows were boarded, the gate chained. A single light glowed faintly inside. "This is it," Caleb whispered. I pulled the small recorder from my pocket. "Whatever happens, we document everything." Inside, the air was damp, heavy with mildew. Shadows stretched across broken machinery. We crept down a hallway until voices echoed faintly, male voices, then hers. "Please, I told you everything I know," Priya's voice cracked. I froze, my fist curled. Caleb grabbed my arm. "Wait, if we rush in, we'll all die. We need a plan." I glared at him. "We don't have time for plans." But before I could move, footsteps approached. 2 men walked past, carrying a folder thick with papers. I caught a glimpse of names on the top sheet: judges, bankers, politicians. Crossfield's real power. And then I saw him, Evan Cross. Tall, tailored, his smile thin as a knife. He stood in the doorway, staring directly into the shadows where we hid. "I know you're here, Sable," he said smoothly. "Why don't you join us?" Evan Cross's voice slid across the room like oil. "I admire persistence," he said, stepping into the light. His suit was immaculate, his smile sharp. "Most people would have given up by now, but not you, Sable. You're stubborn, dangerous." Caleb stiffened beside me, fists clenched. "Let her go, Evan. This isn't what we agreed." Evan turned, amused. "Agreed? Caleb, you still think you're part of this? You were never more than a pawn, and pawns are expendable." He snapped his fingers. The 2 men dragged Priya into the room. Her wrists were bound, her face bruised, but her eyes found mine instantly. "Sable, don't—" One of the men yanked her head back, silencing her. I stepped forward. "She's not part of this. Let her go, and I'll stay." Evan chuckled softly. "Oh, you'll stay. You'll stay because you don't have a choice." He gestured to the folder in the guard's hand. "That file contains names that could crumble half the city. Judges, politicians, bankers. Do you think they'll let you walk out alive with it?" I pulled the recorder from my pocket, holding it up. "Funny thing, you're already on tape admitting it." Evan's smile never faltered. "Do you think anyone will believe a woman who can't even keep her own allies loyal? Marion, the professor? She already sold you out. Priya almost did too. And Caleb." He let the name hang like a noose. My stomach churned. How much did he know? Evan leaned closer, voice low. "I don't need to kill you, Sable. I just need to make the world doubt you." Then Caleb moved. With a shout, he lunged at one of the guards, slamming him into the wall. Chaos erupted. Shouts, fists, Priya screaming. I darted forward, kicking the other guard hard enough to make him stumble. The folder fell, papers scattered across the floor like feathers. Evan snarled, grabbing one of the sheets. I dove after it, fingers brushing his hand. For a moment, we were locked in a silent struggle, our faces inches apart. "You think you can fight me?" he hissed. "No," I spat. "I can finish you." I yanked the page free and bolted for Priya, slicing her ropes with the edge of a broken chair. She gasped, scrambling to her feet. But Evan wasn't done. He pulled a pistol from his jacket, the metal glinting in the dim light. "None of you leave," he said calmly, "not alive." The room froze. Caleb stood panting, one guard groaning on the ground, the other reaching for his weapon. I felt Priya's hand clutch mine, and I knew this was the moment. I had to choose. Fight Evan head on, risking all of us, or get Priya out, sacrificing the chance to take Cross down tonight. My pulse roared in my ears. And then, sirens wailed outside. Evan's head snapped toward the door, his smile faded for the first time. The warehouse walls shook as the sirens grew louder, flashing red and blue through the boarded windows. Evan Cross lowered his pistol but didn't retreat. His smile returned, thin and venomous. "Looks like we have company," he said smoothly. "But don't get excited, Sable. The law doesn't come to save people like you. The law comes to collect its payment." My stomach dropped. The doors burst open. Officers in tactical gear stormed the room, weapons drawn. For a moment, relief surged through me, until I saw where their guns were pointed. Not at Evan, at me. "Hands where we can see them," one barked. Caleb moved instinctively in front of me. "Wait, she's the victim here." Another officer snarled. "Shut it, Kincaid." You're under arrest too. I realized then. Crossfield had already bought them. Evan stepped back, tucking his pistol neatly into his jacket. Gentlemen, thank you for arriving so quickly. These trespassers broke into my property, assaulted my staff. I trust you'll handle it. The officer nearest him actually nodded. We'll take it from here, Mr. Cross. Rage flared hot in my chest. He kidnapped her, I shouted, pointing at Priya. You're protecting criminals. The officers didn't flinch, two advanced metal cuffs glinting. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then Priya screamed, "The recorder! Sable, play it!" My hand dove into my pocket. The recorder was still running, blinking red. With shaking fingers, I hit play. Evan's voice filled the room, echoing through the cracked walls. That file contains names that could crumble half the city. Judges, politicians, bankers. Do you think they'll let you walk out alive with it? The officers froze. A ripple of unease passed through the squad. One lowered his rifle, glancing at the others. Evan's face hardened, the smile slipping. Turn that off. No, I said, holding it high. My voice cracked but carried. Everyone hears this. Everyone knows what you are. The tension snapped. One officer turned his gun toward Evan. Another shouted, "What the hell is this, sir?" Chaos erupted. Some officers hesitated. Others barked conflicting orders. Evan tried to bolt, but Caleb tackled him hard, sending them both crashing into a table. Priya grabbed my arm. "Run!" But I didn't move, not yet. Not until I saw Evan on the ground, fighting, his mask of control ripped away. For the first time, he looked small. And I knew his empire was cracking. We fled into the rain as sirens wailed louder, joined by news vans already circling. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashing. The story was breaking open whether I wanted it to or not. I clutched the recorder, heart racing. The evidence was public now. It couldn't be buried. But as I glanced at Caleb and Priya beside me, drenched and gasping, I realized something chilling. Crossfield wouldn't collapse quietly, and Evan Cross wouldn't forgive being humiliated. The night after the warehouse raid, the city buzzed with chaos. News anchors called it the Kincaid scandal, flashing my face across every screen. Some painted me as a whistleblower. Others called me a disgruntled sister, tearing down her family. Crossfield's spin machine was already in motion. And then the retaliation began. The first blow hit at dawn. My bank account was frozen. Every card declined. Suspicious activity, the bank rep said, monotone. I knew better. Crossfield owned the banks. By noon, Priya's apartment was raided. Anonymous tips about illegal activity. Her landlord evicted her within hours. And that evening, Caleb's car exploded outside the safe house. The blast lit up the night, shattering windows, flames licking the sky. Caleb staggered out of the smoke, coughing, burned but alive. I rushed to him, heart pounding. They won't stop, I whispered. He looked at me, soot streaking his face. Then neither do we. We regrouped in a motel outside Joliet, a neon sign buzzing above our heads. Priya pressed ice to Caleb's arm while I spread papers across the bed. The recorder bought us time, I said, but Crossfield's still standing. If anything, they're angrier. We need a final strike. Caleb leaned back, grimacing. Cross has one weakness. He thinks he's untouchable. If we put him on record again, something undeniable, it's over. Priya frowned. How do you trap a man who knows he's being hunted? I swallowed hard. You don't wait for him to slip, you make him. The plan was dangerous, reckless, maybe suicidal, but it was all we had. We would bait Evan Cross into meeting us, pretending Caleb wanted to negotiate his way back in. I'd be wired, Priya would monitor the feed, and every word would stream live to multiple news outlets. If Cross bragged about his empire, if he admitted even half of what we knew, the world wouldn't just hear rumors. They'd hear the truth from his own lips. But setting the trap meant putting myself in the crosshairs. And after the bombing, I knew one thing. Cross wouldn't hesitate to kill me this time. That night, lying awake in the motel bed, I stared at the water-stained ceiling and felt the weight of everything pressing down. The betrayal, the fear, the anger, but underneath it all was something else, a cold clarity. I wasn't just fighting for my parents' house anymore, not even for Caleb or Priya. I was fighting for every neighbor who lost their home to forged appraisals, for every family crushed under Crossfield's greed, for every voice silenced by power and money. If I had to risk my life to end this, so be it. When dawn broke, Caleb was waiting in the parking lot, bruised and bandaged. "You sure about this?" he asked quietly. I tightened the recorder around my wrist. "No, but it's the only way." He gave a short nod. "Then let's finish it." As we drove toward the city, the skyline rising like steel teeth against the sunrise, my chest burned with equal parts terror and determination. One way or another, tonight would end it. Either Evan Cross would fall, or I would. We chose the meeting place carefully, an upscale hotel bar downtown, the kind of place Evan Cross liked to haunt. Polished marble floors, gold chandeliers, businessmen murmuring over whiskey. The irony wasn't lost on me. A temple of power, and we were here to bring a god crashing down. Caleb walked in first, looking every bit the disgraced partner seeking redemption. His bruises were covered with makeup, his shirt pressed crisp. I followed minutes later, a nobody in the crowd, wired and recording. Priya monitored everything from a van outside, her voice in my earpiece steady. "Signal's strong. Don't get too close until he takes the bait." And then he arrived. Evan Cross. Impeccable suit, silver cufflinks, confidence dripping off him like cologne. He clasped Caleb's hand as if nothing had happened. "Caleb," he said smoothly, "I thought you'd be smarter than this little rebellion. But at least you came crawling back." Caleb's jaw tightened. "I'm here to make a deal." Evan chuckled. "Of course you are. And what's she doing here?" His eyes flicked to me instantly. My stomach lurched. He'd seen me. Caleb covered quickly. "She's no one, just a witness. She doesn't matter." Evan's smile curled. "Everyone matters, Caleb, especially the ones you try to hide." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "So, tell me, what do you want?" This was it, the moment. Caleb swallowed. "I want back in, money, power, the works, and in exchange, I'll give you the files, the ones Sable collected." Evan's eyes lit up with amusement. "You mean the files that already embarrassed me? The ones you idiots tried to leak? What makes you think I care anymore?" "Because," I said, stepping forward, "this time it's live." Evan froze. I tapped my wrist, where the recorder's red light blinked. His gaze flicked down, then around the room. Half a dozen patrons suddenly raised their phones, streaming. Priya had planned it perfectly. Activists, allies, even undercover journalists planted in the bar. The trap snapped shut. Evan's smile faltered. "You clever little..." But then his hand dipped into his jacket. My breath caught. Was it a gun, a knife? The bar erupted in shouts as people realized what was happening. Chairs scraped. Drinks spilled. Phones kept rolling. Caleb shoved him back against the bar, snarling. "Say it, Evan. Tell them what you did." Evan spat, his mask cracking. "What I did? I built this city. Every judge, every bank, every politician. You think they serve you? They serve me." The words rang out, captured by every microphone, every phone. I felt my chest tighten. He'd just admitted it, out loud. But before I could savor the victory, a deafening crack split the air. Gunfire. People screamed, diving for cover. A mirror shattered behind the bar. Evan twisted free, pistol in hand now, eyes blazing. "This ends tonight," he roared. The bar exploded into pandemonium. Shouts, breaking glass, people diving to the floor. Evan fired again, the bullet tearing through a bottle behind the counter, spraying liquor like shrapnel. "Down!" Caleb yelled, dragging me behind an overturned table. Priya's voice crackled in my earpiece, frantic. "The feed's still live." Everyone saw him admit it. "Sable, you've already won." But it didn't feel like victory, not with Evan still on his feet, pistol in hand. He stalked through the chaos, voice cutting above the screams. "You think you can ruin me with words?" he bellowed. "I own this city. Every last one of you lives in my pocket." Phones kept streaming. Cameras caught his rage. The mask was gone. This was the real Evan Cross, raw and violent. And yet, every step he took, every shot he fired, people saw. Not a king, not untouchable. Just a criminal with a gun. Caleb rose suddenly, tackling Evan again. They crashed into chairs, the pistol skittering across the floor. "Go, Sable!" Caleb shouted. "Get Priya and get out!" But my eyes locked on the pistol, gleaming inches away. This was my chance. I lunged, sliding across the floor, fingers closing around cold steel. Evan roared, slamming Caleb into the bar, fists flying. I raised the gun. My hands shook so hard the barrel wavered. Every instinct screamed, "Pull the trigger, end it." But then, in the corner of my eye, I saw the phone still raised. Dozens of lenses trained on me, on us. If I shot him, I'd be judge, jury, executioner. The narrative would twist. The world would see not a whistleblower, but a sister consumed by vengeance. My chest heaved. I couldn't give Crossfield that gift. Instead, I hurled the pistol across the floor, out of reach of everyone. "Enough," I shouted, voice cracking. "This is over, Evan. The whole world just heard you admit it. You're finished." Evan froze, breathing ragged, Caleb gripping him from behind. His eyes darted around the room, at the cameras, the reporters, the strangers who had seen everything. For the first time, fear flickered there. He knew, no matter how much money, how many politicians, how many banks he owned, this moment was out of his control. Sirens wailed again, closer this time, real sirens. Backup. And Evan Cross, the man who thought he owned the city, finally looked small. But as the officers stormed in, Caleb slumped to the ground, clutching his side. Blood spread dark across his shirt. "Caleb," I cried, dropping beside him. His face was pale, lips trembling. Did we win?" Tears blurred my vision. "Yes," I whispered. "We won." He managed a faint, broken smile. Then it was worth it. His eyes fluttered, and my heart clenched as the chaos roared around us. The flashing lights turned the hotel bar into a war zone. Officers swarmed in, shouting commands, cuffing anyone still standing. Evan Cross was dragged to the ground, wrists bound, his face twisted in fury. But my eyes weren't on him. They were on Caleb. He lay on the floor, pale and trembling, blood soaking through his shirt. Paramedics rushed in, pushing me back gently. "Family?" one asked. "Yes," I whispered. My voice cracked. "He's my brother." The next hours blurred. Hospitals, paperwork. Reporters camped outside, shoving microphones, screaming questions. Priya fought them off, shielding me as best she could. Inside the sterile hospital room, the beeping monitors became my world. Caleb was unconscious, machines keeping him steady. The doctors said the bullet missed his heart by inches, but the damage was deep. He might survive, or he might not. I sat by his bed, clutching his limp hand. "You betrayed me," I whispered. "But you also saved me. I don't know which one matters more right now." News poured in by the hour. Evan Cross had been taken into federal custody. The live streams went viral, millions of views, countless shares. His empire crumbled overnight. Politicians distanced themselves. Judges recused. Bank accounts frozen. For the first time in decades, Crossfield wasn't feared. It was hunted. Yet victory tasted hollow. The house my parents left me was still gone. The scars left behind, financial, emotional, personal, would never fully heal. Revenge had destroyed him, but it had nearly destroyed me too. Priya entered quietly, exhaustion in her eyes. "They're saying you're a hero," she murmured. "The woman who brought down Crossfield." I let out a bitter laugh. "Heroes don't feel this empty." She put a hand on my shoulder. "You feel empty because you cared. That's what separates you from him." I looked at Caleb, pale and fragile beneath the sheets. I wondered if he'd ever wake, if he'd ever have the chance to make things right. For now, all I could do was wait. The night was silent when I stepped outside, city lights glowing in the distance. I thought of my parents, of the house they'd entrusted me with. I thought of the betrayal that set everything in motion. And I thought of the cost. Justice had come, but justice was never free. It demanded blood, tears, and sleepless nights. I closed my eyes, inhaled the cool air, and whispered to the dark. I kept my promise. I didn't let him win. Caleb's breathing was shallow, each rise and fall of his chest a fragile thread. I sat beside him for days, listening to the machines beep, watching the nurses change bandages, whispering prayers I wasn't sure I believed in anymore. The city moved on without me. Headlines screamed of corruption trials, resignations, asset seizures. Evan Cross's empire collapsed piece by piece, his lieutenants flipping to save themselves. But none of it mattered while my brother hovered between life and death. One morning, I woke to a sound I'd almost forgotten, his voice. Weak, hoarse, but real. "Water." I jerked upright, fumbling for the cup, holding it to his lips. He sipped, coughed, and then his eyes met mine. "Sable," he whispered, "you stayed." Tears blurred my vision. "Of course I stayed. You're my brother." He tried to smile, but it faltered. "I don't deserve that." "No," I said softly, "you don't, but you're still family." The doctors called it a miracle. Caleb would live, though recovery would be long and brutal. Outside the hospital, reporters still swarmed. Some hailed me as a hero. Others dissected me, questioning my motives, my methods, my sanity. Was it justice or just vengeance? I didn't answer, not yet, because I wasn't sure myself. Priya visited daily, her energy the only thing that kept me tethered. She brought news, Crossfield's accounts dismantled, victims beginning to file lawsuits, families finally seeing a chance at restitution. You did this, she told me. You changed everything. But when I looked at her, all I could say was, at what cost? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. We both knew the cost too well. Weeks passed. Caleb learned to walk again, leaning heavily on crutches. Priya moved into a new apartment. The city buzzed with cautious hope, as if a long shadow had finally lifted. And me? I walked the streets near my parents' old house, the one that started it all. A different family lived there now. Kids played in the yard, their laughter spilling into the summer air. It wasn't mine anymore. It never would be. But maybe that was okay. Revenge had been fire, searing, relentless, consuming. It burned Evan Cross to ash. But fire doesn't build. It only clears the ground. And as I stood there, watching strangers mow the lawn my father once tended, I realized it was time to stop burning. Time to start planting. Months passed. The storm that was Evan Cross had finally blown itself out. His trial became the spectacle of the decade. Cameras swarmed the courthouse. Witnesses lined up to testify. Every sordid detail of his empire spilled into the open. And when the verdict came, guilty on every count, the city exhaled as if a weight had finally lifted. But I wasn't in the courtroom. I was in the hospital, helping Caleb learn to walk without crutches. One afternoon, as autumn leaves fell outside the window, Caleb turned to me. I'm sorry, he said simply. Not just for the house, for everything, for being weak, for letting greed make me someone I wasn't. I studied his face, thinner now, lined with scars. I don't know if I'll ever forgive you completely, I admitted. But maybe forgiveness isn't about erasing what you did. Maybe it's about deciding not to let it destroy me anymore. His eyes shone with tears. He nodded, and for the first time in years, we sat in silence without bitterness between us. Priya rebuilt her life too. She started an organization dedicated to exposing corruption, using the Crossfield collapse as fuel. She asked me to join her. For a while, I hesitated. My entire life had been consumed by vengeance. Who was I without it? But then I remembered the house, my parents, their faith in me. They hadn't wanted me to burn my life down chasing ghosts. They wanted me to live, to protect, to fight for others, not just against one man. So I said yes. The first day I walked into Priya's new office, papers stacked high, volunteers bustling. I felt something I hadn't in years. Purpose. Not revenge, not rage, purpose. I realized revenge is a spark. It can ignite justice, but if you cling to it, it will consume you too. Justice means turning that fire into light for others. That night, I returned once more to my parents' old street. The house was lit from within, laughter spilling into the night. I stood at the gate, watching quietly, then whispered. I kept my promise. He didn't win. I turned away, walking into the future, not free of scars, but free of chains. The story wasn't about losing a house anymore. It was about reclaiming myself. And finally, I had.